one problem is that we have an inflationary system.
There's just so many things that will be done with blockchain.
And that's why I'm so happy to find Bitcoin in 2016.
Today, Leland Alden will explain to us why Bitcoin is superior to fiat money. Dan Morehead tells us how blockchain is being used in businesses. And Greg Foz tells us how he discovered Bitcoin. This is the State of Crypto. Subscribe and hit the like button.
Speed of commerce is different than the speed of hard money like gold. So once we basically developed telecommunications channels and we could, send money globally, ledger to ledger, the whole euro-dollar system, we had this big abstraction between, abstractions for gold and gold itself. And then you can centralize gold, and then you could drop gold altogether and have a fiat-based system. So one problem is that we have an inflationary system, and that's problematic enough in developed countries, but let alone in smaller and more developing countries, they have much higher inflation levels on average. And usually within a lifetime, they experience a hyperinflation and they just lose their savings if they were holding that currency. So that's number one, is all the inflationary angle. And then number two is the fact that it's mostly permissioned. And so you need permission from your bank to do things. And that can, again, in some countries, that's pretty benign. And in other countries that are more authoritarian, and according to estimates from like Freedom House, the way they depict it, about half the world lives under something that's classified as authoritarian or semi-authoritarian. And so the combination of not having developed savings and payments technology that's pretty open and having inflationary currency is really bad.
Did you hear Congressman Sherman a few moments ago?
I did.
And he said it's a Ponzi scheme, the whole thing. What's your response?
Honestly, it makes me wildly bullish to hear people still using such kind of reactionary views on the market. It certainly means we're not in a bubble, right? If people are still thinking it's a Ponzi scheme, they don't realize 300 million people on Earth are using blockchain to make their lives better. If you think about it, migrants spend on average 8% to send money across borders. And for you and me in finance, 800 basis points is just a number. For the migrant, that's an entire month's wages. And with Bitcoin or Ethereum or blockchain, you can send it. Anyone with a smartphone can send it to anybody else on Earth, essentially free, essentially real time. So there's so much upside when you have people are so negative still.
Well, what is the thing that people, when you talk to really smart people, rich people, smart people, MIT, Harvard grads, Duke grads, whatever, and they say, I just can't do it, Dan. I don't understand blockchains and ledgers and proof of work and proof of stake. How do you get them on board? Because we kind of witnessed that earlier in the show with Anthony and Lee.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I've been evangelizing blockchain for 10 years, so I've kind of heard all the excuses and all the reasons not to get into it. The one thing I've never actually read is a very thoughtful paper that's against blockchain. You get the kind of one sentence throwaways that some famous, sometimes very old investors say against blockchain, but nobody's actually written a really thoughtful paper on why blockchain isn't going to revolutionize so many different industries on Earth. And again, that's why I'm so bullish on it, because there is so much promise in so many different aspects. We were talking earlier about whether it's a currency or a commodity. It does 25 different important things. Currency being one of them, being commodities one of them, a payment rail, voting rights, identity. There's just so many things that will be done with blockchain, and we're really just scratching the surface.
I was, as I mentioned, I grew up in Montreal, and there was a mutual friend that was trying to start up a Bitcoin closed-end traded fund that was to trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Now, we were successful in that endeavor. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but initially when I agreed to meet him in Montreal, I was skeptical about Bitcoin. As everyone, you read what you read in the papers, you hear about Mt. Gox. This was back in 2016. And luckily, I sat at a restaurant with him and I listened to the story. And, I got some of the salient points. Well, there's only 21 million. It's decentralized. It's based on mathematics and code. But the aha moment for me, Gary, was when he showed me the blockchain in action, the Bitcoin blockchain in action with transactions and the mempool and the block rewards on the web. We use tradeblock.com as the visual, but I'm an engineer and I'm very visual. I was like, oh my God, this thing is alive. It's a breathing, beautiful technology that's functioning right in front of my eyes. And so my aha moment was when I saw the blockchain functioning and the hashes going across and the transactions and the mempool. And I'm like, all in. I said, this is the solution to the fiat Ponzi that I'd been looking for literally 30 years since I graduated and started working at Canada's largest financial institution, the Royal Bank of Canada, in 1988. And I'll just summarize with one thing. In 1988, the Royal Bank of Canada was insolvent, which is to say that the value of its loans, if you marked it to market, the value of their loans was lower and the losses on the loans was higher than the book value of equity. Royal Bank of Canada was insolvent on its way to bankruptcy in 1988 due to the Latin American debt crisis. So I've been searching for this, and that's why I'm so happy to find Bitcoin.